Hi. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about SI and why we tend to conflate SI with a high awareness of bodily state and why that's not actually the case. Now, bear with me. I know MBTI and Socionics and most of the things that you've probably come across make this um, observation. And I know to say otherwise is blasphemy to a lot of people, but just hear me out and see what you think. Now, to make this case, I'm going to use SI dominant types. And the reason I'm going to use SI dominant types is because they have strong SI and SE. If we were to use SE polar types, for instance, to get a better look at SI, we would have trouble because their SE isn't granular enough. They don't have high enough resolution SE to show us when it's working and when it's not very well. So in our SE dominant types, or SI dominant types, excuse me, we can see that. So I am going to make the case that bodily states are actually recognized through SE, that any physical experience is actually parsed and recognized by SE. Now, what does SI do then? Well, it organizes those experiences. It organizes the objects in the environment. Once you've parsed them into objects through SE, it organizes them into systems and routines, right? So why would a strong SI user be very aware of their body in a uncomfortable state? Well, it's because in all of the routines that an SI user has established and that they're carrying out frequently, they also have their body as an object in that routine. It's one of the objects in the action pattern. So they become accustomed to their body being in a particular state when they execute a particular routine, right? And if the state of that object, their body in this case, changes, then they lose confidence in the rest of the routine, right? Because they don't know that the rest of the action pattern is still coherent, right? If this object is different, then how do I know all the other objects won't respond differently as well? So if their body is an object in the action pattern they're executing, they'll be very aware of its state because it's important for them to be so. But if their body is not one of the objects that is particularly important in that action pattern, or the state of their body, right, isn't particularly important in the action pattern that they're executing, then they're very unaware. And it's not uncommon to see strong, dominant SI users get up from a couch, walk across the room, and knee a table. Not even notice it. It's not uncommon to find them with bruises that they can't explain, right? If they're so hyper vigilant about their bodily state, they should know that. They should be aware of when these things happen, and yet it's very frequent that they don't. So if they're executing a task, let's say they're falling asleep, and it's too warm in the room, it might be even marginally too warm, but if they've gotten used to falling asleep at a particular temperature, body temperature, and in a particular state of comfort, then if they're out of that state, it's going to feel like the whole action pattern has been disrupted. And they're going to become very vigilant about correcting that, whether it's opening a window, turning on a fan, whatever it may be, or falling asleep with the fan on. That's a good one. A lot of SI dominant users have that one. If they get used to it, it becomes very difficult for them to fall asleep without that droning noise in the background because they need that as part of that action pattern. And in the absence of it, it can become something they dwell on, and they can sit and focus on the fact that they're not hearing it instead of falling asleep. Because to them, they see this whole action pattern as having been incoherent at that point. So anyway, I'm starting to ramble. I just wanted to put that out there for you guys. That if you look at SI dominant types where they're SE ignoring, you'll see that they're not very aware of their bodily state when their SE use isn't required for what they're doing, or at least not in any high measure. So if they're doing something that's not associated with a particular action pattern or is a preamble to it, let's say walking somewhere to go do something, they'll focus on the thing they're about to do instead of the walking. They'll trip, they'll fall, they'll be clumsy, they'll do all of those things because they're actually not very aware of their bodily states. They're not very aware of the objects in their surrounding and how their body is interacting with them. They will knock things over. It's very common. Um, and if you think otherwise, I'm really open to hearing what you think and what your argument is, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and this is the best I can come up with. I really haven't been able to work this SI bodily state thing, you know, into a coherent system where it fits with all the other functions, because it really doesn't seem like it does. So, anyway, I think bodily awareness is an SE function. I think that SI users can be hyper aware of it when it's relevant to the particular action pattern that they're executing, when they're in the middle of a routine. But outside of that routine, they couldn't care less, and oftentimes are way less sensitive to bodily changes than most other types. So, tell me what you think.